So I want to go to the last point here, which was consider probiotics with a higher purpose. And so for our soul connection piece, you know, I've been talking about digestion for 2 weeks, and we started with brain coming down into the gut. And at the very, very end of digestion, this is where probiotics come into play after we get into that intestinal phase. And the reason why I said probiotics with a higher purpose is because I find it necessary to not just we're not just taking one type of probiotic. We want to look at a supplement that can really nourish all the parts. And so to give us a little bit about this, my favorite probiotic supplement, which is ProBio IQ, of course, from Solle Naturals. In our Soul Connection piece tonight, we have Greg Halliday to share with us just a little bit of ProBio IQ. Obviously, it's a product that we could be talking about for weeks, but share with us what you can in tonight's segment.
Thank you, Erica. Be happy to do that. I need to pull myself out of my learning zen that I always go into while you're speaking, because I can just keep listening to you. Such super interesting stuff. And the probiotic portion of this actually fits into that. How would you describe it? That there's this saying that, you know, something is just the tip of the iceberg. Something that is known is so much, is just a little piece of what it truly entails. And probiotics and our understanding of them in the body, it fits perfectly into that comparison. Because I'm actually amazed. In fact, just a couple of days ago, Dr. Allison sent me 2 other articles on some very interesting strains and what key things they change and influence in the body. These are new strains that you're not going to see, not that they're new, but they're not strains common in the marketplace. There's so much to learn from them, and they do play a key role in today's discussion. A lot of the things that Erica was teaching us. And in fact, in talking about ProBio IQ, clearly there's a little bit of a message in the title of the product, the name of the product, and that goes in agreement with what Erica's been teaching us, where you go from north to south if you want to change something, and starting right with the head, because we do have these wonderful probiotics throughout. First of all, a little did you know, okay, ProBio IQ, the IQ references mental clarity. It's yellow. It's this part of that clarify. But it's much, much more than that. It really is, to achieve any kind of mental clarity, it needs to be complete and systemic, right? What we're doing, what we're clarifying. And it is a variety of probiotic. It is a combination of 6 different probiotic strains and 2 wonderful herbs. Both of them are probably adaptogenic. One of them for sure is. The second one probably is. And then 2 other soluble but acid-resistant fibers in a tiny amount to grab all these probiotics and the wonderful adaptogens that are combined with them and carry them, as we talked about last week with Vertizymes, deeper into the digestive tract. So that quality, that aspect in ProBio IQ is the same as the one in Vertizymes. So both the enzyme combination, remember it was a combination of herbs and enzymes, and this really double huge variety of proteases, all carried by these wonderful fibers. ProBio is like that as well. So that's kind of the nature of it. You've got this variety of probiotic strains, and you've got these wonderful adaptogens with it, and a carrier. The interesting thing, well, to me, it's interesting. But if you remember just a couple of things, 2 or 3 things from what I shared tonight, please know that the strains in ProBio IQ are not picked because of popularity or commonness of use. They actually are selected based upon a dual activity where they elevate mood and regulate our stress response in a way that's more pronounced than other probiotic strains. That was one characteristic. Nothing got included in ProBio IQ that does not do that. So it is a special group of probiotics. It happens, of course, that all of the strains that do have that special influence on our stress response and mood and various specific cognitive functions also play key roles in the gut. Well, naturally, because of what we've been learning, that goes almost without saying. Okay, so that being said, first, these are from Dr. Allison Caldwell Andrews. Your particular mix of bacteria play a key role very early in your life in programming how you handle stress. Let that one just settle in for a minute and meditate on that. One of the more interesting studies I read shows how throughout the world there are patterns of probiotics that these researchers liken to almost like blood type, that actually cross cultural, economic, and geographic barriers. In other words, there's not a pattern there, that in this geography, people have this pattern. It's not like that. But there are unique patterns or varieties of dominant probiotics. So they program how we manage stress. They play a role in it. I'm not saying they program the whole thing, but they play a programming role. Secondly, probiotics have a huge influence on the responsivity of how we manage stress. So thinking about north to south and starting with right here, probiotics start right here. And in fact, the variety that we include, think of why we selected the 6 in ProBio IQ and the amounts and what else we do, because Erica talked about all the things that can affect them, either by allowing them to proliferate or by killing them. Okay, we can affect it either way. They directly influence in a major way how we handle stress. And it's very specific. The studies will reference directly our HPA axis. Okay, so jumping down to a couple of facts. So I just wanted to start with those two because they are kind of the crux. And this is so interesting to me from Dr. Allison, is right from Erica's talk tonight. Permeability of the gut and how stress has such a huge effect on gut permeability, allowing bacteria and bacterial antigens to cross it, altering our microbiome continually. Lots of data from irritable bowel and major depression indicate that these, when they come, they find an alteration from to the HPA, to sort of the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, that axis, as they like to call it, that is induced by our gut permeability. So what Erica is talking about tonight is right at the, just as she said, is right at the center of all of this, and stress management being the place to start and the place that can never, ever be ignored, and why all of the formulas of Solle address that along with the other things. I'm just going to mention this. Okay, the strains, first one, not super known by people, called Saccharomyces boulardii. Studies with children, lots of intestinal studies dealing with fungus and other things that cause inflammation, greatly reducing when this probiotic is introduced and proliferated in the system. In the case of the children, it was a rotavirus study. The next one is Lactobacillus helveticus. I'm sorry, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these tonight, just in the interest of time, because I want to talk through one of the strains with you tonight. Helveticus, I'll just tell you, in the British Journal of Nutrition, significant changes, positive changes in anger, anxiety, problem solving, and other symptoms of stressful conditions that are different in each of us. We all manifest it differently, though we have commonality. That's Helveticus is the second one. Bifidophilus longum, super famous, getting more and more and more fame because it is so important and key. It is truly kind of a diesel truck in terms of the load it can carry in our gut. And exactly, what am I looking for? Specifically in the topic of tonight, of leaky gut and just intestinal health and permeability. But equally well, that one is studied in a bunch of reports with Helveticus, those two together, and a huge boost in stress management when those particular two. So think of the patterns and stress programming and stress responsivity of the body. Those two were key. And when we saw that, they were a slam dunk to include as the 6. Now, ProBio IQ actually started out with 5. We added a 6th one later because it was so compelling. And I'll tell you, it's the 6th one that I wanted to mention in more detail tonight. But these are the original 5. Lactobacillus casei is the 3rd. Lots of studies about stress and mood. Lactobacillus sporogenes is the 4th. It is heat resistant. And so I think I've been one down because I've mentioned all 5: Boulardii, Helveticus, long Bifidophilus, casei, and sporogenes. Those are the 5. Okay, so now we're on the last one. The last one is this big long German word name, Propionibacterium freudenreichii, which is named after the researcher. I would say discover, but really it's the one who defined in detail, along with a partner in research. A couple of things we should know about. It comes from a group that is beneficial, the Propionum bacteria group. They actually are found in our skin too, in the acnes group. That's a pathogenic group. These are the good guys, not from that group, from the same genus, but a different group. They've been used, Propionum bacteria have been used to make Swiss cheeses, just so you know. They are considered, they are given GRAS status, GRAS, generally regarded as safe, GRAS. And aside from the safety, a slew of health promoting properties have now been identified through quite extensive study. It is a slower growing bacteria. It does not need much nutrient. It is exceptionally hardy, survives at room temperature actually for a very long time. It adapts efficiently and rapidly to stressful environments, and in a variety of situations, humans, because we got a lot of different things going on in our guts, it is quite remarkable how it can survive in many. It is shown to adhere very well to the gut wall. So Erica was kind of showing us the picture in there. Some bacteria are better than others at staying with us. Some just float through more, and we have to, I'm talking about good bacteria, and we have to replenish more. Propione is better at adhering. Okay, what are a few things that it does real quickly? First of all, it actually generates fatty acids, short chain fatty acids, which protect intestinal lining. So think of what Erica's talked about today, intestinal lining. It actually downgrades a certain protein that is pro-inflammatory and pro-abnormal cell. Sorry, I said downgrades, I think downregulates this, so inhibits it, ratchets it down. This bacteria produces substances which support the absorption of calcium, magnesium, and potassium. So in other words, you're eating it and you're going to actually see it and use it better because of this bacteria, instead of just flushing your money through, which can happen, right? It produces bacteriocins, which are lethal to bacteria, which inhibit gram-negative bacteria, a variety of yeasts, a variety of molds. Another. It's also antifungal, well, I mentioned that in the last study. This is just a separate study I'm reading, and it's antiviral. Here's another biggie. It actually produces or synthesizes B vitamins. So this bacteria, which is the 6th strain in ProBio IQ, produces B8, B9, and B12. In the case of B12, there's some interesting facts to say around it. But before I get to the B12 in more detail, so B8's biotin, right? A lot of interest in biotin for skin and other health, and folate. A lot of interest in where I can get this. This bacteria does it. ProBio IQ has little factories. These probiotic strains, that's what they are. Okay, so on the B12, sometimes we think B12 is B12 is B12. Dr. Allison in this training reminded everybody that spirulina, miso, nori, and wakame. I think I'm pronouncing that right. They all have B12, but the form they contain is actually known as pseudo vitamin B12. What that does is it has a similar chemical structure, but it actually can be harmful because what it does is it takes up the absorption space and blocks the body's ability to assimilate the active B12. She calls it analog B12 or the pseudo vitamin B12. So sometimes you'll see printed that these things, now spirulina has lots of other good nutrients, but people will talk about B12. Yeah, not a thing there. And in fact, in terms of B12, that's actually getting in the way. So you want this bacteria. Here's another interesting point. It actually generates electricity. There's a certain amount of millivolts. I'm trying to think of how much it is. Yes, energy, which again, another tip of the iceberg thing in the body, is something that probiotic strains actually can provide certain of them, and P. Freud and Reishi is one of them. Okay, I mentioned about certain fatty acids. CLA is what it produces, and CLA has to do with regulating blood glucose, reducing body fat, preserving muscle, and preserving airways and lungs. It has lots of great effects, tons, right? That's just three that they talked about in this article. It also is a stimulator to the other friendly flora. When you have Freud and Reishi in your system, the others grow better. Why does it do that? Well, a couple of things that it does. It actually produces things that kill other harmful bacteria and make it hard for them to adhere to the cell walls. Whereas with good bacteria, in particular, one of the studies was on Bifidophilus, they will colonize more readily with Freud and Reishi in them. Because so you got this dual thing of anti-adhesive action for the bad stuff and helping the good stuff. An example of the bad stuff, H. pylori, this bacteria propionum inhibits the H. pylori adhering to the intestinal wall. So that was a whole study on that. It also can bind to harmful mycotoxins, either neutralizing or removing them, This bacteria, it binds to certain heavy metals like cadmium and lead so that the body can remove them. It can bind to harmful plant lectins. That was another study that she shared. So the list is long. I'm going to stop there because I've talked for a while, but these probiotics, you can see why we added a few years after the original formula. The P. Freud and Reishi is such a powerhouse, and it's just taken that formula, which was already wonderful, to just beyond another level. So thank you, Dr. Allison. Another reason why ProBio IQ, that's an easy one to, even at a 1 capsule a day maintenance, you get 2 months out of 1 bottle, or if you're working on things, you determine how much the need is, but it doesn't take much to do that daily. All right, Erica, back to you.
I love it. Yeah, I think this is another one of those products that I could talk about or listen to you talk about all day.